bar Trent Alexander-Arnold, Palmer's the best creator in the squad. I think he's the one that, with 30, 40 yards from goal, I think he's a better creator than Phil Foden.
You talk about the lopsided nature of the squad. That's a direct result of 14 years of austerity and all the green spaces being shut down and all the kids now learning how to play football on concrete.
Why should you continue to go to work, be on the field of play, entertain and experience some of the crap that we know these players are experiencing?
What's happening, guys? Welcome to Whisper It Loudly podcast. Now we're going to drop this as like a new season, right? So you've had the previous 13, 14 episodes. That was like our intro. That was kind of like our tester. We kind of come in and give you something. Shush. All right. It was a long intro, but it's 14 episodes intro. But that was our intro. This is the new season. We've been away for a couple of weeks and we're really glad to be back. I'm Jordan Jarrett Bryan, for those of you who don't know, Channel 4 News and Black Academic Productions. I'm joined by Troy Townsend, now formerly of Kick It Out, who we'll get to in a second. How are you, first of all, sir?
I'm very good, very good. I've had a bit of a morning, but we won't go into that.
Well, that's being kind, but we won't go into that, because if we go into that, we'll be even later than we already are due to you being late. So
right, okay.
We'll park that for a second. We've got a guest who I'll introduce in just a second, but just before we get to our guest and to our chat, for any new listeners and viewers, Whisper It Loudly, we are a podcast where, as you may have noticed, Darren Lewis and Hugh Croft are not with us this week. It's the four of us. We talk primarily football, but we also cross into politics, current affairs, and a little bit of foolishness as well. And hopefully you feel, as viewers and as listeners, you get something a little bit different from us. A lot of the subjects we chat about aren't necessarily original, but hopefully you feel like our takes and our views and perspectives on those subjects and stories are original, are different, and maybe things that you are thinking but just not hearing on other outlets and platforms. Please subscribe to us on all of our platforms. We're here on YouTube, so please slap the subscribe button and the bell. We are growing nicely, our community and our audience. We want you to join us there as well, and all of our socials. We're on TikTok because we're cool, Instagram and Twitter as well. Whisper It Loudly, go find us, check us out, and join the fun. All right. Okay, we've got a special guest on the podcast this week. The main man at The Athletic, as far as I'm concerned anyway, Mr. Carl Anker. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks. Too kind. David Ornstein's main man.
He is, and I left out my joke about him being the real main man. No, you're our guy. You're our guy. We love you all. We love you all. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get into it. We're on the eve. In fact, just before we get into it, Carl, let me just defer to Troy for a second, because I mentioned in the intro there that Troy is now formerly of Kick It Out, a strong 13-year stint as the head of education there.
Head of player engagement.
Player engagement, even. Sorry, let me get it right. Just briefly, Troy, why are you moving on? Can you even tell us a little bit about what's next?
It's the right time. 13 years in this organisation feels like a quarter of a century. The highs and lows of the game, what I do to support players who have been discriminated against, obviously predominantly racial abuse. The organisation's also going in a different steer. And I just feel it's the right time for me to look for pastures new, whatever they may be, while still delivering education into football clubs.
Well, I will just say that as someone that I first met you through Kick It Out and interviewed you on various occasions, and I think I'm speaking for so many people when they say thank you, because as black people and other minorities, but if we talk about black people in particular, we know what it's like to live with racism. Yeah, we know that. But it's your job. Yeah. And I've said to you before, we've had lots of chats before about how tiring for you it must be to have to go on Channel 4 News, then Sky Sports News, then BBC News, then The Athletic, then The Guardian Football Weekly, then whatever outlet, constantly talking about something that isn't just a job for you. It's something that you personally feel. And I rate you so much for that. Kick It Out gets a lot of heat for not having the teeth that I think a lot of black people would like it to have, but you can't control that. You can only do what you can do. So I think thank you is what I would probably say on behalf of so many people that have recognised the work that you have done from within Kick It Out. So thank you and all the best. And we're glad to have you as part of, obviously, our foursome here at Whisper It Loudly. Now, let's move on to the Euros. We're on the eve, gentlemen, of the Euros. Let's talk about England on this pod today and what we think their chances are, and kicking off with what we think their strongest 11 is before we get to we think is going to overall win it. I'll throw it to you first, Carl. How excited about these Euros, first of all, are you? And how excited about England's prospects of doing well are you too?
Oh, those are complicated questions. How excited am I? Okay, it's that thing of I'm half trying to deal with various Manchester United news and I'm packing to go to Frankfurt soon. So I'd be a lot more excited if I could watch it like a civilian, but I'll be professionally excited now. In terms of England's chances, I'm less confident for England's chances for this European Championship than I am for pretty much any competition Gareth Southgate's been in charge for now. I think the more I look at this England team and the more I look at the very, very impressive body of work Southgate's put forward, the more I focus on the 11th of July 2021 and go, that was the chance. Donnarumma, you broke my heart. Why did you do that? So this will be a good, air quotes, tournament for England. I think England are now a good, air quotes, international football team. They are going to be there or thereabouts between now and international tournament that begins in 2030 something. Can they win it? I don't think so.
Interesting. Troy, what's your... It's interesting listening to a lot of podcasts and fan channels and a bit of the radio over the last week that the tone has definitely gone from 3 months ago, oh, best squad, they're going to win it. They've got the best squad. If they don't win it, it's a failure. They've got to win it. Look, they've got the best generation we've ever had. In the last few days, it's second, third, maybe fourth favourites. I'm like, my view was always from the get-go that I thought there was two squads that were on par, if not better than England. I think Portugal and France's squads, I think, match up to England's. I think this squad's been slightly overrated. But how do you see England going into this Euros?
I think the reason for that being overrated is because there's an imbalance in the squad. And I think that imbalance has been because we look very good in terms of how you want to select the forward line, and we'll all do that soon. Then you look at the midfield and you think to yourself, that's competitive, that can, go up against the best. And then you look at the defence and you think, ooh. Then you look at the best and think the best could impregnate our defence quite easily on a number of occasions. And I think, for me, whilst they are one of the best nations in Europe, I agree with Carl, and obviously your assessment as well, is that I don't think they'll win it. And when you think of reaching the final of the Euros last time, and obviously, whatever happened there and the penalties and everything else, it's almost like the next expectation was then you have to go and win it. And I don't think England are in that position, unfortunately.
Well, just before we get to what we think is going to be, what we think the England 11 should be, just let's go a little bit positive. I'll start with you, Carl. What do you think is going to be the difference, or what should be the difference in terms of England winning this tournament? What are the things that England need to do to win this tournament? We've all agreed that we don't think that they will be the champions, but for whatever reasons you believe that to be, why and what can they do to make sure that they are lifting the trophy on, I think it's the 14th of July?
Kobbie Mainoo. Kobbie like Robbie. Kobbie Mainoo gives me hope. Just saying his name makes me happy.
Is that your Manchester bias, Carl?
He makes me happy.
Yeah.
In a way that not every football player can. He makes football look easy, and he plays football in a style that you're not supposed to be able to play when you're still a teenager. You're meant to be 26, 27 years of age before you get that calmness in and out of possession. And the fact that he's got this nonchalant, he almost plays football like a touch typist, or someone who doesn't have to look down constantly. That relaxes me. The thing that concerned me in the last Euros final against Italy was basically around the 50-minute mark, it became very obvious that Italy were beginning to overwhelm England in midfield. Mason Mount was not getting a handle on Jorginho, and Verratti was beginning to turn the screw. And you kept going to Gareth, please make a sub, please make a sub, please make a sub. And this was a time where Jude Bellingham was still a teenager and wasn't the player that we know him today. And Bellingham's now transformed into a different kind of midfielder to what we originally forecast. And Mainoo's come through and you've gone, that's the guy. he's going to be the guy that the next time that scenario comes along, you can bring Mainu in, and Mainu's going to be able to get closer to Jorginho and Verratti and deal with that sort of situation. Because I think for a while England have had, due to Calvin Phillips's less than spectacular time at Manchester City, that midfield space has been free, and we'll have a long debate over which person should be next to Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham. I'm sure we're all going to disagree when we do our 11s, but Mainu, perhaps it might not be this Euros, but I feel as if the next Euros, the next World Cup, that's going to be Mainu's job, and that makes me happy. This critical mass of attacking players that you described, Troy, is also really, really pleasing in that a lot of those players are really, really young. I still every now and then do a Google on Saka and go, oh, blimey, he's going to be around for a while, isn't he? So this is why I say England are going to be good for a while. And okay, maybe Gareth Southgate doesn't leave this job having won a trophy, but I do believe he's created an environment that makes the next person's job very, very easy. And he's created an England team, an England ecosystem that has brought more fans together in a way that I thought was practically impossible.
Yeah, I have some slight concerns, although I've said how good England's midfield is. I think Jude Bellingham is a tired footballer. And for me, that's to be expected. I've watched I was at the Champions League final. His influence wasn't as big as many expected, but he created the second goal. I've watched the El Clasico, where I thought he was anonymous, but the qualities of the guy was that he scored the winner at the back stick. So his intelligence is still there. And his understanding, obviously, of the game is still there. But I think the enormity of the season that he's had has led to him kind of tailing off for the last month or so. I don't know if anyone agrees, but...
Now, this is an interesting one in that when Bellingham first arrived at Real Madrid, he had just a phenomenal goal-scoring hot streak. He's finished the season now and he's got 18 goals off I'm gonna say it, off an XG, expected goals. So
that's a yellow card, Carl. That's a yellow card.
No, this pod had it in it.
Yellow card.
I prepped you. So Jude Bellingham scored pretty much 8 goals more than he should have scored according to the numbers, which meant that tailing off was always going to happen because there's only so many times the narrative machine just carries you through and you end up scoring a winner in a Clasico from just an outrageous long-range effort in his first Clasico. That was, like you said, he was anonymous in his first Clasico. Gavi basically took him out to deep waters and left him stranded, and you thought that was it, and then out of nowhere, that. So I think one big thing is, if you are an England fan and you haven't been watching too much La Liga this season, you might think Jude Bellingham now is this all-conquering attacking tyro, whereas a lot of what he's done for Real Madrid, particularly in the second half of the season, has been applying garnish to games rather than dominating games. So one big thing to a lot of England fans is you're not getting, October Jude Bellingham, if only because that Jude Bellingham was basically playing as a striker, whereas this time he's going to have to be some sort of number 10. So that's going to be an interesting thing. And then the rest of it, I am worried about Phil Foden and how he fits into this England team.
Well, so that's an interesting point. You made 2 good points. So first of all, I agree with the point about the midfield. People are talking a lot about the defence not being particularly great, and I agree with that. I think there are bigger concerns about the midfield, and the reason why, and I said this, I think, on the last pod we did a few weeks back.
Possession.
I think the problem I have with this England team is a problem I've had since I've been watching this England national team. They don't know how to control games. And Carl mentions that Euro final against Italy. For me, that was the difference. You had a good, decent Italian team. They're not a brilliant team, but they had players that knew when
midfield.
Yes, when we have the ball, we know how to be patient, not panic, and work it. How do we work the ball? I'm not convinced we have a midfield that know how to control games under pressure. And then to Carl's second point there about Foden, we'll get to it in a minute. He's not in my 11. He's not in my 11. Not because I don't rate him. He's not in my 11.
Boy, this 11's got to
should we get into it?
Can I just say
Go on.
I hear what you're saying about the midfield, and listen, we don't have the luxury of a Luka Modric.
No.
You know, we don't have the luxury of a Toni Kroos. You know, and it's those players that I think that we have to develop them so that actually, because when you think about it, when they're playing in the Premier League, these players look comfortable on the ball. They look comfortable. They're tidy. They keep it, but maybe it's the hustle and bustle of the Premier League that's not conducive to playing the European sport. No?
I think this is a cultural problem for England entirely.
Yeah.
In that the Premier League is the fastest league now. I talk to loads of coaches and whatever, and they say the pace of the game is so rapid that basically there's no such thing as a number 6 style defensive midfielder in the Premier League. No. You have to be at least have the cardio capacity to be box to box. And this is the problem we have is when a player emerges that might have the Toni Kroos or the Luka archetype who can sit and be tidy and be controlled, the very first thing we do in England is go get closer to the goal.
Yeah.
Right, and we've seen that with Bellingham. Bellingham, there was a point where he looked like a very, very clever, controlling box-to-box midfielder, and now he's been pushed further and further and further towards the goal to the point where he's basically playing false nine for Real Madrid. Mainoo's emerged this season, and his first coming out party against Everton at Goodison Park, he's collecting the ball from the centre backs. He's looking very, very composed. He's making sideways passes. He's keeping things ticking. And then I was watching the Iceland game. And Channel 4's going, where do you think his best position is? It's like, oh, well, he's got to get more of a goal threat. We've got to get him closer towards the goal. And this is a very English thing in that when you want to, is the easiest way to get spotted by scouts. The easiest way to stamp your appeal onto a game is, can you create goals and score goals, or can you stop them? And that controller element of, I sit here and I just keep things... No, and that part of that is a cultural thing because the way English coaching works. Part of that, I think, is a problem of language because various other, Italy has a word for that job. England does not. We call it a controller, a tempo guy, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Italy's like, no, it's this. You're this. And also, I think a part of it is to be political about it. Is just. It's really hard to develop controllers when you spent the last 14 years on the austerity and all the green spaces have gone away. Right?
I hear it.
The average English player, if you think about 20 or 30 years ago, England was very, very good at making centre backs. Proper meat and potato, head the ball, make the tackle, make the slide tackle
meat
on grass.
Potato,
Meat and potatoes. Meat and potatoes centre backs, mate. Harry Maguire is an excellent meat and potato centre back.
Yeah, I have some other words.
But you can't. We don't. England doesn't make that player anymore because the green spaces on which you play on are gone, and what you've got instead are cage football, five-a-side, ballers. Right? England now makes loads of players of a Saka, Hudson-Odoi archetype, which is fantastic, and that's why Eze, and that's why you talk about the lopsided nature of the squad. That's a direct result of 14 years of austerity and all the green spaces being shut down and all the kids now learning how to play football on concrete. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but the archetype of what an England football player looks like has flipped. And that's why now...
No. I hear that.
Quite fun.
I hear that. Let's go into our 11s then. Let's rattle through these. I'll rattle off mine first. So I've got obviously Pickford in goal. I've got concerns about Pickford because the lack of competition and the complacency that I fear may develop in his game due to Ramsdale and Trafford either not playing or playing poorly.
I don't think he shows that for England, though. I think he shows it in his club form sometimes, but I don't think he shows it for England.
Maybe.
England Pickford is one of the most important players in that squad.
Yeah.
She's so important.
My back four is Alexander-Arnold, Walker, Gahey centre-backs, and Trippier at left-back. I've got Rice in the 6.
Hang on.
We go back.
Bear with him, Carl. Bear with him because he's thrown me already. But let him finish.
Let me finish and then turn me apart. I've got 6. I've got Rice in the 6. I think actually Rice is the most important player in this 11. I've got Rice in the 6. I've got Bellingham in the 8. I don't know why we've tried to, Carl's explained that he's kind of turned into a false nine, Lampard-esque kind of player in La Liga. That's not the Bellingham that I think is at his best. I've gone Gordon on the left, Saka on the right, Palmer in the 10 behind Kane.
Ooh.
I've got no Foden in my 11, only because I still think of all of our creative options, probably bar Trent Alexander-Arnold, Palmer's the best creator in the squad. I think he's the one that, 30, 40 yards from goal, I think he's a better creator than Phil Foden. Ooh. And I'm not having this just kind of crowbar Foden on the left or the right, where he's not at his best, just because he's been the best player in the league. I think in that 10 role, I think Palmer.
He's got 27 goals.
I hear that. I hear that.
That's such a just because he's been the best player in the league.
Anyway, we can tear mine apart. Let's hear yours.
Can you just go back to the defence and just name the defence again?
So Alexander-Arnold
you
at
named
right
Trent,
back.
and I was confused there.
Yeah.
I've gone Alexander at the right back, and I've got Walker and Gahey as the centre backs.
Oh, Kyle Walker's your centre back.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
In a 4.
That's where you threw
In a 4. I don't think Stones. I think Stones is kind of approaching that Ledley King, Vincent Kompany kind of period now, where I don't think you're going to get a full game out of him, and if you do, you ain't getting 2 in a week. So I just fear you're going to waste a sub by starting Stones.
So you've got Walker and Gueye.
Gahey, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Carl, you're up.
Okay. Right. Okay. Now, before we begin,
The caveat's coming up. What's the disclaimers coming out now?
Before we begin, I think something a lot of fans are overlooking is that there are 2 England 11s you have to build for, and this was way more stark back in the groups and knockouts, and this was way more stark back in the World Cup and in the Euros, because Southgate had 4-3-3 group stages where I'm going to dominate possession, and the moment I reach a big team, it's 3-5-2.
Yeah,
and what he's done now is it's always a 4-3-3 or it's always a 4-2-3-1, but he changes the players based on the opponent. So you've got to create your 11 as to, I'm going to get more than 50% possession, and you've got your 11 of, it's France, I've got to make some tweaks here. However, in the interest of clarity, here's my 11. Here's the 11 I would pick for the Serbia game. And this is an 11 that I want to dominate possession, win 1 or 2-0, and that nil is very important to me.
I agree
Clean
with that.
sheets is how you get
I
yourself
agree,
through.
yeah.
So, Pickford's your goalkeeper. Left back is Joe Gomez. I don't want to see Luke Shaw play until the knockout stages. He's wrapped up in cotton wool and he's on us.
At all, but never mind.
Yikes.
I'm a Manchester United fan. I wouldn't be too. I wouldn't be too mad if Luke Shaw didn't play whatsoever.
Yeah.
If he didn't play whatsoever, the Manchester United fan was like, "Great, you've kept him even fresher for me."
He's clearly not fit, so I agree. I think if you don't need to play him in the first 3 games, just leave him for the knockouts.
But how silly is that? You don't play him in the first 3 games, but then you leave him for the knockouts. He's clearly not fit. He hasn't played since February.
Well,
he struggles
the logic
anyway.
being him, you're giving him another week to try and get up.
Giving
to
him
match
another
fitness.
week, but you need to. He has to play a group stage game, or else how are you going to throw him in the knockout stage when it's cutthroat?
I'm with you.
I would give him. So
I was going to say,
I'm sure did not play the first game against Croatia, and he played the final one, and he worked his way up and ended up being one of the players in the tournament.
And I would say I agree.
So you're hoping.
I agree with
fingers
Troy.
crossed.
I do agree with Troy, but I think because there's nothing at left back, you're in a very unique scenario where you have no left backs.
But then that's a lopsided squad. As he picked it, because he's all right, whether it's Chilwell, whatever else. And I know Chilwell didn't play a lot of game, but you have to bring an alternative that is the natural position. I think this playing players out of position and putting them in there and whatever.
I'm with that.
I don't agree, and that's why I disagree with some of your squad pick. But you're going to disagree.
Can we get there in a minute? Let's hear Carl.
Carl, sorry.
Let's just hear Carl's first.
No, try and right. And watching the Iceland game, I very much thought, oh, is it too late to get Tyreek Mitchell to go on?
Tyreek Mitchell, yeah, exactly. Never mind.
Just in case. Yeah. So Joe Gomez.
Our Palace supporting producer behind here. Sorry, Carl is nodding there furiously, like yes.
Good.
Sorry, Carl. Go on.
Good. Joe Gomez left back. Left centre back is Mark Guehi. Mark Guehi is now going to be the Harry Maguire successor. If Maguire does play for England again, that'd be nice. But if he doesn't, that is Guehi's role. And I'm also texting Tomori going, "Do you want to go to the United States for the World Cup?" Because that should also be
nailed
his
on.
role eventually if he wants it. Right centre back, I'm going for John Stones. The reason why I'm going for John Stones is because if Luke Shaw cannot be fully fit, I'm going to try and do a box midfield. And it's going to need John Stones to push up and join Declan Rice as he pivot to do the box midfield. Right back is going to be Kyle Walker, self-explanatory, great right back. Can also create that back three when John Stones pushes up. Declan Rice is going to be your deepest midfielder, your number 6 or your number 4 if you're a classic academic. The person next to Declan Rice, this is the big thing. This role is going to change based on who you're playing against and what you want the person to play against. I think against Serbia, you need legs, so I'm going to go for Conor Gallagher. I think in games where you're going to expect it to create more and dominate possession even more than Serbia, and I think Serbia, if you don't take Serbia seriously, they're going to punch you in the mouth. I think in games where in games where teams are sitting deep and you really, really want to turn the screw, that's Trent's job to be next to Rice. I also think Mainoo's a fantastic option.
Just give us your 11 card. We'll break it up later on. You got to move on.
Against Serbia, it's Conor Gallagher next to Declan Rice. It's Jude Bellingham as the number 10. It's Gordon, left wing. Gordon's job is to run in behind. This is one thing I'm quite annoyed about in Southgate's squad. He hasn't got enough options to run in behind. He should have taken one of Sterling or Rashford.
I would have taken
just
Rashford.
as you're running in behind threat. I would have done that the same. Harry Kane's up front because obviously it's Harry Kane, and Saka's on the right wing. Phil Foden's not on my starting 11 because you need a threat to run in behind, and Foden likes to receive defeat.
Troy?
So,
I like that team. Troy.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say what I've done differently. I agree with the back four, although with Cole's back four, not your creative back four.
Typical.
I've put Kieran Trippier left side. I don't believe in it.
Okay.
I've got to be honest, I don't believe in it. I don't think it's the right thing, but I'm working with Gareth's head here. I don't believe in dropping Rice 1 and I don't believe in dropping Bellingham 1. So Trent comes in for me with Rice and with Bellingham playing as natural as they have done for their teams. My only controversial thing here is where you've both left Foden out. I've put him in. If Gareth Southgate by now cannot find a position for Phil Foden to go and play, then he might as well not take him. And he might as well not take him because there is Cole Palmer and there is Saka, who many will choose in their first 11. I don't think he's ended the season great. I think Foden is flying. And I think Gareth's got to either go, I'm going with my guy, or do you know what? He's pointless to me. And I think the creative nature, I agree with both of you about what Gordon brings to the side. And I think 6 weeks ago, we may not have included Gordon, but he's in there because actually he's the only player that can do what is going to be asked of him. And I think he'll be very creative, but I would start with Phil Foden. Remember, this is just for the Serbia game.
Okay, because we've got to move.
Foden on the left.
Oh, Foden on the right, Gordon on the left.
Oh, so no Saka?
No Saka.
No Saka, okay.
Oh,
interesting.
Wow.
Remember, this is a competition that lasts for a month. We need players that are fine. I agree with you about Mainoo as well. He will get his good game time.
And I think a player as well that I think won't start the competition, but I've just got a gut feeling, my gut feeling that he's going to finish the competition a star and in the England 11 is Eze. I think Eze finishes I think he finds a way into his England squad. I'm really excited about. I'm biased towards Eze because I've always rated him and liked him, so there's bias there completely. But I just feel he'll be the person he'll be the Saka. Was it Saka the last Euros? Didn't start, but by the end he was the guy.
Loved him. Yeah.
I think that'll be.
It's not biased to like Eze. It's just having good taste.
I'm with you, Carl. I'm with you. And to wrap, who are our winners of the competition?
I'm going basic France. Can't see beyond them.
Germany.
I've gone Germany as well.
I've gone runners-up Germany. Okay. I think Germany will have a good tournament. I know everyone's looking down on them.
Yeah. So we all agree France-Germany final.
I think France-Germany final. I'll have France to win it. With Germany runners-up.
Okay. Just so we let the listeners and viewers know, Darren and Hugh have both gone for France to win this Euro. So we will be talking more, obviously, about the Euros as the Euros progress. It kicks off on Friday. Opening game, Germany, the host, against Scotland to kick off the tournament. Right, let's move on now, guys, away from the field of play. We're going to combine now a little bit of political talk with football talk as well. And I just thought it might be worth an interesting brief chat about the backdrop in which we think black players for England and other nations could be going into. We know that so many of Europe's leading nations are moving to the far right. We see nations like Hungary, Italy, Holland and Austria led by far-right leaders. France, by the end of this Euros, could and probably will have a far-right leader in charge of their nation. And we've seen a German publication put out a poll in recent weeks asking if they think the German national team should have more white players in it. And I'll come to you first, Troy. And do you think that that is going to be relevant, a problem? How do you foresee the backdrop of what's politically happening in Europe affecting the Euros and the black players that are going to feature at the Euros?
I don't.
You don't think it'll matter?
I don't. Not this time around. I get the conversation. Look, the past major tournaments, we built ourselves up in Russia. Do you know what I mean? For something to happen out there, the World Cup that's just gone, we've built ourselves up. One thing that normally happens is that these tournaments carry off without any issues whatsoever. The issues generally are when nations are knocked out and they feel the wrath back at home. As we've seen that with the England squad, we've seen it with other nations as well. You know, it's very difficult to travel back home if you don't win. And their expectation for most of these nations that they're there to win it. They're not there just to participate, obviously the bigger nations. But I don't foresee, look, and I could be totally off track here, by the way, but I don't foresee problems in this competition. Let me take it back to Russia 2018. They did a very good job with isolating the problems, the people who were there to cause trouble. Mm-hmm. You take the ringleader off of the streets, you then devalue the kind of pack behind them, and the tournament goes off without the issues that we were expecting, and we were expecting a lot of racism in Russia. The minute the tournament finished and the Russian league started, very first game, there were the racist incidents again. So I think that most of the tournaments have been very clean. What we don't hear is the behind-the-scenes stories, the kind of situations when fans are travelling around the streets and stuff like that. That may be an issue, but I don't foresee in-stadia stuff. But I do foresee, if teams are getting knocked out, who the targets will be for the hate and the discrimination.
Carl, do you think it's a little bit of a reach, the kind of premise of what I've put forward, or do you think that because we know UEFA and FIFA are so toothless when it comes to cracking down on racism within their competitions, if we're seeing the fans from these nations who are led by far-right leaders, you know, fans are citizens as well, they're going to be in the stadiums. Do you agree with Troy, though, that it won't actually be a problem at this competition? It may be later on where we see a bigger problem.
It's a really complicated question. I absolutely see where Troy's coming from. No, I absolutely see where Troy's coming from, which is basically when the eyes of the world are on you in international tournaments, nations tend to sanitize themselves, make sure they have a clean image. And Troy's absolutely correct. During the Russia World Cup, the more dangerous fringe elements associated with football were not there. The police were quite happy to see football fans drink alcohol openly, which is against the rules in Russia and whatnot. And during the tournament, and this is what you normally see, is during the tournament, sponsors and other stakeholders, shall we say, want to put a country in its best light. And that means money and sometimes very, very, very big raised eyebrows mean certain dangerous things go away or pushed underground. And everyone does it. I mean, you want to get really real, I'll tell you how London 2012 did it for the Olympics.
I've just seen a film about that. So yeah, let's we got lawyers. Yeah. We get the lawyers in.
They're not actually been employed yet. So let's just.
I mean, you called a lot of politicians far right, and I'm pretty sure all those politicians like to pretend that they're not far right. So
true.
They did.
Now, so there's that. So that in terms of, are you going to see the very visible, very, very obvious, overt, dangerous cases of racism in and around stadiums and being discussed? And I always want to say, I would hope not. And a lot of these politicians, if you get to that level where you might actually be in charge of a nation, you probably have a little bit of cunning, nous, however you call it, to not be nakedly bigoted on a world stage. And that's why that poll with the German football player about the makeup of the German national team was so odd. It was just so
blatant,
retro in its bigotry.
Yeah.
And what was quite pleasing was the fact that many members of the German national team outwardly said, "This is nonsense." Now, this is the German national team, which, let's be really real here, hasn't got the best record with racial sensitivity. But the fact that even the German national team, the fact they went, "No, this is nonsense. Get rid of it." So there's that. I don't think the politicians are going to outwardly say stupid things, and I would hope not. What you might get is the more insidious forms of racism. So the very subtle hand gestures that you might see from fans, or you're going to boo a certain football player, and they go, "Why are you booing that football player?" And you go, "Oh, it's not because of their skin color. It's because they went from this team to this team. That's why we're booing them." And that will probably happen more on the surface. And then you'll get what we're more used to, which is if your team gets knocked out, or if a black player misses a penalty, then we know what is more likely to happen. So I think that is more likely to happen. I'm talking to you right now. I am flying out to Frankfurt. I have had my security training before I fly out to Frankfurt. So things I've got to be aware of when I'm flying and when I'm covering certain games. And there are, 2 or 3 games in this European Championship which are just higher risk for me because I am black and because of what we know is going on in various nations. And I hope nothing goes wrong, and I know how to handle myself and whatnot. But that's just part of the territory there's just certain areas that are spicier for black people.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And we would all like to hope for.
Well, let's segue then into something that I think for some people would be seen as a positive step. And it was announced this week that the 3 football fans, 3 Valencia fans who racially abused Vinicius Jr., the Real Madrid superstar, they were sentenced to 8 months in prison for abusing him at a match. They were found guilty of a crime against moral integrity with aggravating circumstances of discrimination based on racist motives. Vinicius Jr. put out quite a powerful statement. Excuse me. I'll just read a little bit from it. I'm not a victim of racism. I'm a tormentor of racists. This first criminal conviction in the history of Spain is not for me. It's for all black people. And he went on to talk a little bit more about, or just giving his reaction, basically. We'll start with you, Carl. Do you think this is a significant moment for La Liga and for Spain, or as I fear, this has happened because the person at the center of it is a huge figure? Because it's Vinicius Jr., they've moved to do this. I'm less confident that this would have been the reaction and response had it been from a League Two in Spain player that received the same treatment.
¿Por qué no los dos? Right? ¿Por qué no los dos? Why not both? Right? Is this a huge momentous event in the history of Spanish football? Yes, absolutely. This is the first time football fans have been reprimanded, imprisoned for racially aggravated behavior in a football ground. That is huge. Has this happened because Vinicius Jr. is basically the face of La Liga? Yes. But it's still a good thing. And one thing that we have to, you get into the chewy nougat of things. The Premier League is very, very good at understanding overt forms of racism are bad. And it's taken a long time and the work of many, many good people, including Troy here. Thank you very much. But most Premier League watchers, Premier League football fans, people who go to Premier League grounds, and you can even put this, throughout the entire English pyramid, understand throwing a banana at a black player, bad. Making monkey chants towards a black player, bad. Understand They're good with the overt. I think that black player is a bad person because they're black is a bad thing to say, and you shouldn't say that publicly. The Premier League has problems with insidious forms of racism, so we've still got a way to go to get past the pace and power dynamic and whatnot. But in terms of overt, that is a bad thing to do, to discriminate that black player based on the color of their skin. Very, very good at that. Whereas in Spain, and this is something that has been quite puzzling for the non-La Liga watcher week in, week out. Spain, and particularly with Vini, they always frame the overt forms of racism directed towards Vinicius Jr. as not racist, but based on provocation. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we've constantly heard, well, Vini wouldn't get this sort of stuff if he stopped dancing. Vini wouldn't get this stuff if he didn't talk back. It's not racist, it's just responding. Whereas the Premier League's gone, you can call someone a tall C word, you can call someone a slow C word, but if you call someone a black C word, that's actually beyond the line. Whereas that line never really existed in Spanish football. This imprisonment, or this criminal case around Vini is Spanish football beginning to say there is a line here. And if the line is what Vini says, that will do for now. But the fact that Spanish football's gone, there is actually a line, is good for everyone.
Can I just come in there,
Well
Carl?
done.
Can I just come in if you don't mind? There's a couple of things, and one of the things is I'm not very good at giving people a pass. And it's the one time I've disagreed with you today, and I think whenever we talk is the state of what happens in the Premier League. You know, for me, the Premier League fouled the last time there was a banana on the field of play. And I know it was 2018, and I get that people say things have moved on, but when that banana was thrown by that Tottenham fan and Aubameyang, and if we look at the news reports coming back from that period of time, the word racism was not in any of it. So I felt that we went backwards at that stage rather than go forward. Say it, call it for what it is, and identify and punish. And look, the individual was punished, but he wasn't punished for racism. He was punished for throwing a missile on the field of play at the Emirates. Now, for me, that's one of the biggest disgraces that I've ever seen, because we don't want to talk about it too much. Now, obviously, I'm privy to a lot of information that you guys wouldn't be, because I see the reports come in, etc. And up and down our leagues in England, we're not in a very good place. And anyone can question me on that. We're not in the best place. I agree with you about what's happening in Spain. It is a step in the right direction, but I'm not running around patting people on the back at the moment, because ultimately, how many times has Vinny Jr. been racially targeted in the last 2 seasons? Effigies from buildings is one thing, not even being near a stadium and being racially abused is another thing, and no one damps down on those chants. But then 2 weeks previously, or 3 weeks, how long ago was it now? Time skips me. But after Nico Williams was racially abused, playing for Bilbao against Madrid, and there was a partial stadium punishment and a fine, and then trickling out into the news only a couple of weeks ago, Madrid have won their appeal. Atletico Madrid have won their appeal. So hold on, the partial stadium goes out the window. Even the €20,000 fine goes out the window. So for me, unless we have a consistent line, then I'm going to take the free going to jail, and they're only young and they'll learn lessons when they go in there, and I get that. And I see it as a landmark case, but I'm not jumping up and down until it's a consistent. And that is the kind of punishment that not just Spain, not just Italy, not just France, not England, we're all kind of meeting out, because the abuse is of a level that made the one of the world's greatest stars, emotional, in tears, in a press conference at that stage of time.
I think what's also interesting for me is now that Mbappe's moving to Real Madrid, you've now got what we probably agree, the biggest star on the planet, football player in the world, moving to La Liga and to Real Madrid. And I just wonder, with the trio of Mbappe, Vinicius Juniors and Bellingham, who I don't know the guy, but I think he's very, very conscious and very, very aware of what he will and won't stand for and what he will speak up for. Now you've got those 3 black players at the biggest club on the planet. I'm really keen to see now what La Liga and UEFA do, should this happen again.
It will happen again.
Of course, but my point is, I want to see what they do about it, because now you've got arguably the three biggest stars on the planet in your league. What's going to happen now? This happened when it's Vinny Jr. on its own. You can mess around. Now you've got the spotlight even more so on your club and on your league. What's going to happen? Just to link it to the Euros as well. I think in our WhatsApp group we were talking about, or somebody asked whether they think England will take the knee, and even what we think England will do if there is racism directed at any of their black players. Just briefly, because we kind of got to move on. Troy, what do you think should be the conversations that England are having, or the FA are having, in preparation for if the worst does happen?
Well, they're having those conversations. They've had those conversations. They have them ahead of each tournament now. And that's one good thing, is that they prep the players now, and they ask the players' opinions and they get feedback. One thing that they will not do, and it was a question that I was asked yesterday, is they will not walk off the field of play. And for me, that is one of the most ultimate things that a player or a manager, and I wouldn't put the onus on the players, can decide to do in the face of racism adversity. And I know people say, well, you let them win that way and this, that and the other.
Nonsense.
But why should you continue to go to work, be on the field of play, entertain and experience some of the crap that we know these players are experiencing? So, listen, I would hope that it was part of an option. It's not going to be. It's for the players to get your head down. We'll deal with everything behind the scenes.
So just so I'm clear, the official line is, if somebody's racially abused, as a collective, we are not walking off.
England will not walk off the field of play.
Do you think that in the moment, I mean, let me ask Carl, do you think in the moment they will adhere to that?
I mean, if the discussion's been had, then I would assume they would. Although it's the thing of, no plan survives engagement with the enemy. So I don't like having to invent such scenarios in my head to see how I would react to such a thing. The fact that we have to is quite depressing. I'm hoping that such things won't happen. I think if an incident like that does occur, the England team is more likely to stay on the field. I think especially after some of the things I was privy to in and around the Qatar World Cup, there definitely seems to be pressure now to make sure games occur when on the day games are finished and occur on the day they're scheduled for, rather than trying to reschedule things, because the schedule's so compact and whatnot. Trying to do perhaps the correct thing morally.
That's what I was going to say.
Number of invested stakeholders that go.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Trying to walk off the.
Sorry to cut across you, but the schedule is more important than the impact of racism. For me, that is wild.
It shouldn't. It never should be. However, as someone once expressed to me, good business decisions and good moral decisions aren't the most natural of bedfellows.
Apart, yeah.
Well, listen. Let's look. We've put a bit of a negative slant on the Euros. I think we're just these are convos I think we have to have and be prepared to have during the Euros, and we want to make sure that all the black players, of course, all the teams don't have to deal with this,
and our journalists
as well, and all the black people that are going to be out in Germany. I'll be heading out there soon as well. Are protected. And I think it's important to have a conversation about what we think can and should be done in the event of the worst case happening. But to bring it to end on a positive for the Euros, look, hopefully there's a festival of football. We see some great goals, some great games. From an England perspective, they go as far as possible, and we just see some good football. I don't really care too much who it's from. Just give me some good football. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm really excited for this. It's that thing of, the more I think about it and the more I'm looking at the predictor and you're clicking who's going to finish top. Hang on, that quarterfinal could be quite fun. Hang on, that could be great. So that's great, and it's great that every now and again we do get these sort of summers where you can just all sit down and meet loads of people. And even just doing my research for the Euros, I'm learning loads about all these various European countries and their capital cities and their history and whatnot. And the reason why I find this job so entertaining and nourishing is because football at its best is an anthropological study, right? Most of what I know about Romania has been learnt through reading about the Romanian national team and their various European teams.
I hear that.
1994.
And I'm really excited to. Yeah.
Brother Choi and them man there. Petrescu and them, but-
Man. Anyway,
Listen, we're gonna wrap, but just before we wrap, we're gonna do our Talk Me a Talk, and Carl's gonna lead our Talk Me a Talk this week because you've got a bit of a bugbearer, you've got a bit of bone to pick with the describing of writers, creatives as content creators. And Darren flagged to me this was kind of semi-kicking off online, and you were at the heart of it. So just kind of set out, just briefly, first of all, what your issue is with people being described as content creators, and then we can kind of try and get to an agreement as to what we think is maybe a better description of these people.
I think it does all of us a disservice when we when people describe themselves or get described as content creators. So not too long ago, I helped do I helped put together a talent ID day at the Athletic, and 2 or 3 of the prospective young people there described themselves as content creators. Went, no, you're not. And I went, what? I went, you're not a content creator. Just don't ever call yourself that. Go read the Martin Scorsese interview where he describes his dislike of the word content. And I think content takes music, art, video work, cinema, television, dance, and it just combines them into this large, tasteless, greyless sludge that various tech people trying to attach commerce onto. And I wholly reject the term content. I very much disagree with people describing themselves as content creators. I think we should always be intentional when we describe what we do for a living and the things we do for a living.
So you're a journalist, you're a dancer, you're a singer, you're a videographer.
Yes. When someone comes up and says, "Oh, I'm a content creator," I go, "Okay, so what is it that you actually do?" And not as an insult, because I want to know what you actually do. I want you to talk about the thing you do with passion. I want you to describe what you do as passion. And something that also concerns me is there's been 2 or 3 times in my career where when someone wants to dismiss me, they go, "He's not a journalist, he's a content creator."
Ooh.
And I go, interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Why is there a distinction in your mind between what a journalist is and what a content creator is? And what is it that I've done that's deigned you to go, I'm one and not the other? One of my fears is there are a lot of very, very talented non-white journalists, writers, statisticians, dancers, videographers, camera people coming through calling themselves content creators, and it's creating a gas basement onto them as they're being called content creators. Because once you call someone a content creator, you make them a lot more interchangeable than saying that person's a really talented videographer, or that person's a really, really talented video producer, or that person's a very, very talented writer. Because if a content creator is just as good as another content creator, right? The only difference there is just how big is their following. And that is my fear. And that is my big thing now to anyone coming out of university, anyone listening to this under the age of 25. Don't call yourself a content creator. Be intentional with what you call yourself. Don't you dare call yourself an aspiring version of what you're doing. If you're doing it, you are it. And if you've been paid for it, you definitely are it. You're not aspiring. You're doing it. Go out and do it again. And I think we've got to be very intentional about how we describe ourselves, particularly at a time where the creative industries and media industries are shrinking because various invested stakeholders at the top want to make a little bit more money, and they think they can just bin off hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs to do it. So don't call yourselves content creators. You're not a content creator.
I love that.
I do too. I think I've been guilty, hands up, of calling people content creators. Yeah, and I think Carl's right. It's more than anything, it's lazy. And I think beyond that, as Carl said, it does them a disservice, really, because it's not really, they are interchangeable. It's not really describing them for what they actually do. I just think one of these new post-digital media, social media terms that I think people that put up a camera and talk about football feel, I'm not quite a broadcaster, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a presenter, so I'm a content creator. And they're kind of giving themselves this tag, when the reality is, again, as Carl says, when you step out into the real world where you're dealing with businesses, they will band you in a particular group that enables them to probably pay you less, and disrespect you a little bit because they're not actually really understanding what your craft is. So we've been told off here, Troy.
Yeah.
So we've been noted. Message to everybody out there, call yourself what you actually are. Thank you very much for joining us this week, Carl. It's been a real pleasure.
Brilliant, Carl.
Having you on. Safe travels out to Germany. I'm hoping to get out there for the latter part of the competition, so I'm sure we'll. Are you there for the whole month, or are you back and forth?
I'm there for the group stages mostly.
Groups,
so
okay.
I'm going across 4 cities in Germany. I'll be covering 8 different national teams. It looks like. And my apologies for any poor pronunciations I make right now.
Getting out of it early. I like.
I am. There are certain languages that are just a bit harder for my tongue to get around, but I am working on them.
Brilliant.
If I do get it wrong,
All we can do is try, Carl. All we can do is try.
Or if I do get it wrong, just send
tap
me
me
an email
up.
and tell
Just
me
be
where I got
kind
it
and
wrong.
help me out. Yeah, I hear it.
I had a wonderful podcast after England's first game against Croatia, and I had a very, very nice Croatian football fan send me an email going, "Hi, Carl. Just want to say you got every Croatian surname wrong." And it wasn't as a point of disagreement, saying you got every Croatian surname wrong. Here is why you got them wrong. Because I think as an English speaker, your tongue works this,
in a different way.
That's
you want to
nice.
make it work like this. So next time, try and say this. I went, oh, well, this is brilliant.
Brilliant.
So when UEFA releases the official pronunciations, I'm going to be downloading that.
You'll be all over it. Well,
Brilliant. Great story.
Well, listen, follow Carl's work across your socials and, of course, at The Athletic as well. Oh, same with us. Make sure if you're not following us at the moment, please do so. We're on Instagram, TikTok and Twitter. Go subscribe to our podcast. If you're on the audio platforms, we're everywhere across all of your favourite audio platforms and, of course, here on YouTube as well. Hugh will be joining us at some point during the Euro, so he's out there as well. So maybe we can get him in remote on one of these weeks. Darren, I'm sure, will be back next week. Troy's unemployed now, so Troy will be definitely with us for the next few weeks coming up as well, and I will hopefully be here as well.
Look at Carl's
I know, I'm just trying to not look at Carl's shock. But it's facts, isn't it? Facts. Anyway, until next week, peace.